All right, well, we're live. So,
Hello.
hey, yeah, hey, everybody, Guitar Huntery in another country. I'm Jeremy, I'm the Guitar Hunter. This is Rob Chappers, which I guarantee more of you know who he is than you know who I am.
Not
I sh-
necessarily.
no,
It's
but
very
it's,
nice to meet you, Jeremy.
oh, it's so good, man. Yeah, and I think if you've been around guitar culture, guitar world for the last, I mean, you're one of the old awesome guitar channels from way back. But if you've been around guitar culture, you know Rob Chapman, and few people have had more impact on finding the right gear and making new music and being creative than you have, which is awesome.
Thank you very much, man. Yeah, I was just saying before we went live that well, I haven't told you, but it's my 15th year on YouTube
Whoa,
anniversary this November. And I'm literally just editing a video right now on my little laptop where I talk all about meeting Lee for the first time and the first videos and what it
that's
was
so
like to,
good.
why I went to YouTube. It was just an alternative to MySpace kind of thing.
Exactly, dude. I was into MySpace pretty hard, and that's awesome. Cool. Well, so hey, we're gonna go a little short today because both of us have kids and both of us things are going on, and so we're just gonna do 30 minutes or so. But I'm super excited that you're here.
Thanks,
Um,
man.
so so we'll just jump in. I'm just gonna blast you with some questions, and we'll just
Do
talk
it.
about guitars and life and music. So do you have a moment in your life when you fell in love with guitar, or you like realized like, oh, I want to play guitar when you were little?
Yeah. And actually, it might sound weird, but no one's ever asked me that question.
Hey, well, that's
Yeah,
actually Mark Hopkins' question, so he gets
right. Well,
credit for
thank
that.
you, Mr. Hopkins. I was walking past a music rehearsal room at school, and I heard two or three guys jamming on guitars, and I thought they were really cool, and I thought
Yeah.
it sounded amazing, and they were playing Sabbath, and I sort of opened the door and went, "Oh, hey, what are you playing?" And they went, "Oh, yeah, we're playing Black Sabbath." And I was like, "Oh, that's really cool." And I sort of stood there outside awkwardly watching, and then I got a guitar for my 16th birthday, and that was the
Oh,
end of the
cool.
end of everything.
Dude, that's so cool. Yeah, so for me, mine has a little bit of tragedy mixed in. So when I was 14, I was diagnosed with a heart condition and I
Oh,
couldn't be in any sports, and it just changed my life a ton. And my older brother had gotten a guitar, but he didn't really care about it. And I just picked it up and started plunking around, and I figured out that intro to The Other Side by the Chili Peppers, and that was my like, oh my gosh, I can do this, and dude, it just lit a fire, and
brothers guitars are always better, aren't they? My brother had a Kirk Hammett ESP,
oh,
Skull and
cool,
Crossbones Japanese proper ESP from ages ago. I
that is
used to
so cool.
borrow that one.
Oh, that's awesome. My brother, it was funny. My brother saw like within a couple weeks, I was better than him after a year of him trying, and so he was like, "You just this is yours," and
Oh,
dude, and so I just took it and ran with it, and it's and I think I play guitar differently than a lot of people. I don't care about guitar celebrity. I want to ask you about that later on. For me, it's always been more about discovering and making a soundtrack for my life.
sure.
It's just always been like sitting around at my house or my party or in a band or whatever, and just making and discovering. So yeah, so you talked about your first guitar. What was your first guitar when you were 16?
It was a white Strat copy by a brand called Falcon. Probably just like a distributor's own brand
Yeah.
type vibe. Nothing special. I upsold it 6 months later for a Charvel Strat,
Oh, cool.
and I just kept chopping and changing, all the
Yeah.
way up to
Cause
I had a.
what's that banana yellow one that
It
you
was a
what?
Yamaha. That was like three guitars in.
Okay.
In fact, I was so embarrassing because the little guitar store that I used to go to called Stag Music in Trowbridge, Wiltshire. The owner, his name was John. He said, "Oh, have you ever tried this?" And I thought it looked amazing. And he said it's by Yamaha, and I said, "Don't they just make motorbikes?" And he went, "No, they make guitars as well." I had no idea at all, but I loved that guitar.
Oh man. Yeah. Okay, so man, I have the same kind of thing of just like trying new guitars, and like my first like fairly good electric guitar was a Hondo. It was like a Hondo Les Paul copy,
Mm.
but it wasn't a bolt on neck. So but a friend of mine like described it in middle school. He was like, well, it was like my older brother's, and it's black, and it has like big silver things.
That'll do.
And it has like blocks, and like he described it, and it was like, oh, it's a black Les Paul Custom. So I was like, yeah. And then I got it. And it's like a Hondo 2, but he gave it to me for $40. So
that's a deal, dude.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was super fun. And then I saved up and I bought an Epiphone Black Beauty, and I played that for a long time because I was into like, I think you and I are like 10 years apart. So for me, I came in at like pop punk, Blink 182, Sum 41.
Okay,
those are the bands that I was really into.
I'm 46. I'm definitely older than you.
Yeah, I'm 34. So we're not, not bad. But yeah, cool, man. So for people that don't know, you moved from the UK to Malta during a tense time.
Actually, literally just before the plague. So the reason for moving, it was a little bit different. We wanted the chance to... My wife, her parents had given us this beautiful flat to live in, so we didn't need to pay rent. And the idea was that we'd stay in a flat, enjoy the sunshine, kids get to see, they get to be exposed to more of their mother tongue and the culture. And then we would save money, go back to England and buy a house. But then we just stayed.
Do you think, are you staying in Malta, or are you...
We're here for good now.
Awesome.
No, we're here. We'll definitely settle down here. Probably eventually we'd like to have somewhere to stay in England as well. And for me personally, I'd love to get somewhere in America at some point.
Dude, I would love that. Come hang. Same kind of thing. So my wife is from New Orleans, Louisiana, and I'm from Virginia. So I'm from like the mountains, looks like the Shire, and she's from just like the swamp. And so we lived down there for a long time. I had a guitar shop there. But the same kind of thing, like it was an adventure. It was a different thing, and we could kind of build our own life. And we moved a couple of years ago, and it's just been an adventure since then. So I'm glad you're on that adventure. It sounds awesome.
It's very strange moving to such a small place because, I mean, this island is smaller than... It's about half the size of London.
What?
Yeah, it's tiny. It really is tiny.
I didn't know it was that small.
Do you know where Malta is?
I mean, it's in the Mediterranean, right?
Just below Sicily.
Oh, okay.
But you have to like zoom. Oh, there it is. You know what I mean?
I missed it. I missed it. Yeah. Man, that I didn't realize it's that small.
So who cooks at home? Do you cook or does your wife cook? Because you have great cuisine from both places.
So we both cook a lot. So I grew up, my dad is a classically trained French chef. So I grew up cooking a lot.
Nice.
Yeah, it's amazing. And he's pretty good at teaching us stuff along the way. But so when we were in Louisiana, I just went full force cooking classes and learning how to, ask my mother-in-law and her mom and just learn how to make all kinds of jambalaya and, crawfish etouffee and just delicious food. So when you come to the States, we'll hang out and we'll just do a food tour.
That would have happened if NAMM was going ahead in January, but it's not. It's cancelled. They've combined the two into one, haven't they?
Yeah. I mean, it's a weird world. It's really changed because I'm mostly a used guitar guy, and that's most of my channel is buying and selling old guitars, and I'm really into old acoustic guitars, old Martins and Gibsons.
Nice.
And it's been really tricky just trying to figure out how to navigate meeting people, and then like if I wear a mask, commenters get upset with me if I don't wear a mask.
Yeah, I get a lot of that. You can't wear a mask, or you're wearing a face nappy and you're a liberal, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm just obeying the law, bro. I mean, to be honest, in Malta, COVID is just gone. I mean, there's like in the entire country, 500 people have it. It's just nothing here.
Yeah.
We're very isolated. The sea is a barrier,
Yeah.
And people here have been very, very, very careful and safe. It's all dealt with, but probably we shouldn't talk about this on your podcast because you're just going to get more hate,
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting... I feel like my message is music and friendship. Find the right guitar and then build community around your music. Yeah. And I think you've done such a... I mean, and this is the first time you and I have ever talked, but it's I feel like I've known you for years because of even just like the inside jokes. And I'm sure you're tired of talking about it, but like the Miku pedal, like I think that is like one of the funniest things in
Thank you.
all of guitar culture.
I'm happy to have created a meme, and I think you're right. I think I kind of coined a phrase, which is your vibe attracts your tribe.
That's
And
so good.
I think that's what I've always wanted, irrespective of the inevitable cancellations and hatred and stuff that you just get online. Path of the course, being a public person for many years, I think as long as you can maintain your own truth and your happiness, real happy people will associate with you and want to be involved. And then when I meet people in meat space rather than my space, real flesh land, it's we just bro down.
Yeah.
I've met people before. I'm not saying this is any kind of a flex or whatever, but I've met people before who've sort of fainted or burst into tears because they'd wanted to meet me, and then we just gone for a coffee and they couldn't believe we were just going to get coffee.
Yeah.
But I'm just a bro like you.
Yeah.
I like talking shit about guitars and hanging.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, because of YouTube, it sort of inflates the situation. They feel like I'm this this different kind of personality guy, but I'm just a dude. I'm a dad.
Yeah. Well, I'm the same thing. Like I have 3 kids. Like, so we just got back. We were on vacation this past week, and I'm like, I have 26,000 subscribers. Like, I'm not a big guitar channel.
Doesn't matter how many. Doesn't matter how many. It's the quality and how much they're interested in you.
And that's what I feel like. I have such an amazing tribe of people that just are really kind to each other, and
that's good.
It's really good. And but what's interesting is like I'm just now getting to where if I go certain places, I'll see someone see me, and they'll like, oh, hold on. And they'll like hand their phone to their wife or whatever, and they'll like want to come up and talk. And it is really cool because they just want to tell me about their life and their story and what guitars they found and how I helped them get the courage to go and negotiate and buy a new guitar.
It's really good,
dude. I think it's so good. And I'm with you. Like I'm just like I'm a very normal guy. Like it happened. We're at some like outlet mall in Georgia the other day, and some guy saw me, and I'm literally just like with my kids. They're playing on one of those like toy put a quarter in, play on this little bulldozer thing.
Yeah.
And this guy's just like, hey, what do you think about mahogany or rosewood? And just like jumps into like the burning guitar question.
That's when you should go. Tonewood's a myth.
Yes. Oh man. I'm not gonna take that bait.
Take the bait.
Come
on, Jeremy.
So,
I know the truth.
Yeah, I know. Well, I think especially for I'll take this off. So I think especially for electric guitars are so assembled that I think it causes many problems. And I think, and you are absolutely an authority on this, owning a guitar company, an electric guitar company.
I know some people.
And I think so to me, like I worked in a vintage guitar shop for a long time, and I've just nerded out about guitars for a long time. I think electric guitars are so assembled that there are so many variables, and they all will have some. I think you diminish the amount that each thing can change the tone of a guitar, like the frets, the tone wood, a bone nut, like all these things. Like they might have a little change, but I think you're just getting to where like there's 60 variables. Would you
like to know what the general consensus is amongst the major 4 or 5 manufacturers, including pickup manufacturers?
Please do,
because it might be interesting for you. And I don't talk about this a lot on YouTube because I can't be bothered with the hatred, so I pass it to you.
Hey, fair.
But this is the truth about the physics of the situation. The guitar is a physics system.
Yeah,
and the whole creates a tonality. The pickups speak the tone given to them by the strings. The strings are allowed to resonate with certain frequencies, some of which are absorbed by the unit of the guitar. Some materials absorb low frequencies, some absorb high frequencies. And so it works in reverse to the way that most people think. You're told that a maple cap gives you a bright tone, Whereas the truth is that a maple cap absorbs low frequencies, and the remaining frequencies are spoken by the pickups.
Oh,
Now,
man.
this is known by
Yeah.
all the pickup manufacturers, all the top guitar manufacturers, which is why they use these systems. But they don't go, it works in reverse. Maple actually is kind of, it takes away things, because it's convoluted, it's confusing and convoluted and difficult to explain.
Yeah.
But it does make a difference. However, if you're going to use a distorted tone, it only makes about 2% difference, if that. With a clean tone, it makes about 10% difference.
Yeah.
And then again, it depends on how hard you pick and how heavy the strings are. So it's a very small difference, but it does make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And man, that's really interesting. But so years ago, I had a friend who milled a bunch of a bunch of black walnut. And I was like, how hard can it be to make a guitar? So I bought some Tele router templates, and I made a couple Tele bodies out of walnut. And they were so shockingly, jarringly bright. And so that's where I'm like, tonewood is not nothing, but it's not this like magical unicorn horn.
Yeah.
You know
what makes a bigger difference to tone? Construction method and lacquer. Because if you have a guitar...
Oh boy, we cut out there for a second.
Yeah, just for a second. I think the Wi-Fi reset its lights or something. The things that make the biggest difference to tone: construction method. If it's an S-type guitar, Strat, how many springs, and the lacquer. They make the biggest difference of all. Because if you've got a neck through, the whole system resonates differently to whether it's bolted on. And if you cover it in lacquer, the whole thing vibrates very differently to whether you have a natural top. And you can really see this if you scatter very fine sand or form as clay on top, ring it with a hammer. So you suspend it on a it's quite technical, but you suspend it level on a bed of strings, and you resonate it with a hammer and cover it in form as earth or sand. You'll see a pattern of where the rings of resonation come from. And you can tune a guitar that way. And we discovered that construction method and lacquer make the biggest difference over wood.
That's cool. So I was just right outside of Nashville, Gallagher Guitars. And that's one of the things that they're doing is they create this whole Pascal rating based on the vibration of the guitar tops that they have.
Right, cool.
And so with it, because they're in acoustic guitars, they're saying like the soundboard is a speaker cone.
Of course.
And so they're trying to get to where they can get the roundest, like if they can get it one that has a closed circle, they know that guitar will be great. And there are some they're starting to disqualify. They're like, hey, we know if we're breaking if the ring goes off on either side.
Right. You don't want a ring to go off.
Yeah.
But we should be talking about tone lacquer or tone construction more than tone wood, because they make the biggest difference. But anyway, tone wood, it's a real thing. But it's a very, very, very small difference.
Man.
So,
well, that's what I think. I think some of because you and Lee have had the ability to break myths and also to just show your genuine reaction. Like I think of all the Kemper stuff. Like some of that is just so helpful, especially because I live in a small town. Like we moved from New Orleans. We now live in a small town in the mountains in the Shenandoah Valley. And my local guitar shop literally exploded. They had a gas leak about a year ago, and the whole building blew up. And so I'm living in a town with no guitar shop.
Dude.
And, so it's
Did you say Shenandoah?
Yeah. So we're in the Shenandoah Valley.
I'm remembering that I got on a tour bus with a band called Shenandoah back in Minnesota years ago.
Whoa. Okay.
Must be a famous area.
So Shenandoah, the Shenandoah Indians are from like upstate New York, and then when George Washington came to the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia, so it's basically like an hour west of D.C. He said something like, "This looks like the Shenandoah," so anyway, no Shenandoah Indians ever lived in the Shenandoah Valley, but it's this big, beautiful place, looks like the Shire, and
nice,
and has no guitar shops, but it's a place that our kids are filled with wonder. Like there's a national park here, there's a national forest. It's just.
Do you have bears?
We do.
Oh.
Yeah, no water bears, I don't think. Right? Don't you have a water bear tattoo?
No, I don't have a water bear tattoo. I have a bear tattoo.
Oh, okay, that's what it is.
I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you. Yeah, that one. That's my bear tattoo.
That's cool. I've got a horse. I've got a horse tattoo. So
look at that. We're already getting semi-naked for our viewers. This is the best thing. Best thing that could ever happen.
For patrons, you get more. So I wanted to ask you, because we just have a couple more minutes. But I wanted to say, as someone who embodies music and friendship, how have you developed deep friendships? And then also, how has that intersected the last year during the pandemic? How do you...
Good question.
Yeah.
How do I develop deep friendships? I think it's important to realize that a friendship is something that needs to be maintained. You know, everyone's got that friend. You don't talk to them for 2 years, then you do, and it's just the same as it always has been. But it's important to maintain friendships. And so I like to ring people for no reason at all. Not because I want something, not because I need something, but just ring them and have chat. Like my buddy Max, my tour manager. I mean, I talk to Lee and all those guys I was going to swear that every day.
Yeah.
But it's important to just stay in touch with your friends and then plan things. I think having things planned in the future is a nice thing. And then during our current plague problem, in a way, it nicely forced me to make new friendships because I'm in a different country. I didn't know many people, but I have a business to run, several businesses to run. And I obviously formed a new band here for Clockwork, Wolf and Company, had a new lineup. And so it's forced me to meet new friends like Zaire and Robert and, Luke. And it's the best. We're off to a farmhouse in Gozo to write music for 3 nights, just the 4 of us. We're gonna have a really fun time having a barbecue and writing music and broing down, I think it's important to realize you never have enough friends. A lot of people go, oh, I've got friends, I don't need to make any more friends. That's fine, but never cut yourself off from the opportunity to make a new friend.
Yeah, man, especially thinking about, because that was one of the biggest things for me, was moving 1,000 miles from where I grew up to, the U.S., especially Louisiana, has a deep French culture that I had no awareness of. And it was really amazing coming in and, like what you say, just like being open to new friends and new experiences. And man, I feel like I found my people in South Louisiana. Like food, music, friendship, let's hang out. Like, these are my people.
Do you have beignets in Louisiana?
We do. It's a big thing, like in New Orleans.
I've always wanted to try a beignet, but I'm gluten intolerant, so it's a real problem, man.
Oh boy.
Hopefully there'll be some kind of liberal, tree-hugging, gluten-free, vegan beignet place.
That's true.
Where I can go and just,
Yeah, man. It's a hard place to be vegan because it's just like.
I'm not vegan. In the fridge right now, I've got some venison defrosting.
Hey,
my wife is a very strict vegan, but I am embarrassingly gluten and dairy intolerant. It's really bad.
Yeah, that's tricky.
And I love food.
Man. Yeah. Man, yeah, it's funny. There's so many people in here talking about food, all these comments. Let me see. Somebody's saying something about any here, I'll show you. Any cuisine is better than English.
So I'll go better than that for you, Mr. Michael P. England doesn't have a cuisine. Now, English people will deny that, but it's a fact. The roast dinner is a German thing. Fish and chips comes from France. French fries come from France. A lot of it is just invaded food. The Picts, the North, the French, the Norwegians, the surrounding countries invaded. England is an embodiment of 5 different tribes.
Yeah.
All of whom left, our national dish is Indian cuisine. We have great Indian food. But England doesn't really have its own thing. The exception, I would say, is cottage pie. Possibly is an English dish. But the votes are out on that one. We don't know.
Yeah. So maybe a year ago, I started making Yorkshire pudding because we got really into Nigella Lawson during pandemic. Dude, if you want to...
She's hot, bro.
And, yes. And, well, I don't know how vehement... but the just the vibe, the cinematography, the soft focus, it feels like a soap opera. But yeah, so we started making, I've been on this mission to kind of learn to expand my culinary chops. And
You
yeah,
need to get Chef Brian Zhao on this show.
okay,
He'll
I'm
tell you
in.
the truth. Have you heard of Chef Brian?
I don't.
Okay, Chef Brian Zhao.
Okay,
He is a shred guitar in a really good metal band, and he's a pro chef from New York.
awesome.
He got me the most drunk I have ever been in America.
I like that last caveat.
In America, I mean, I've been in America a lot though, so I was Rabia and I were completely effed. I mean, barely able to walk. It was an absolute obscene mess. But I'm thinking about starting a cooking thing. I really am. I love it.
Oh
Food
man,
and music, they're very similar, you know.
yeah. Especially because it allows you. Okay, this is my soapbox for music. You are almost always better suited to interpret things into your style, into your strengths, rather than just imitating. So I always say, interpret, don't imitate. For me, being a very normal guitar player and a very normal singer, my only chance is to lean into my strengths. And I think the same thing's true with food. Let it filter through who you are and your style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we should combine them.
Yeah, I think so. I have other guitar questions.
Do it.
We're coming right down to the end. What's a guitar you think everybody should own? Isn't that hard?
I think everybody should own a Chapman ML3 Pro Traditional because it's the one that I use almost all of the time.
Oh, that's awesome. What's the lava looking one that you showed the other day?
That's an ML1 Pro Modern. So the ML3 Pro Trad is a T-type.
Mm-hmm.
Seymour Duncan single coils. By the way, I have more time if we need to go past 5. It's fine.
Okay, yeah. Let's keep cruising until you got to go.
Yeah. So it's only, just for the listeners, viewers, it's only because my kids are coming back from their grandparents and they'll be very loud and they'll be clinging to my legs and I won't be able to speak or breathe. So, yeah, no, I think, okay, if it wasn't for a Chapman, I'd say everyone needs a telly. You need a telly in your life.
Dude, I totally agree. And it has always been interesting to me that Chapman Guitars has had so many T-style guitars.
Because it's my favorite guitar. It's the best single cut.
Which is such a I get that, but it's still been so confusing because you have such a gainy tone. Like your style is so heavy.
Yeah.
But then you have this bluesy thing. But even then, it's still like T-style with humbuckers typically, or mini hums, right?
Yeah, I mean, for the Clockwork Wolf and Company stuff, I've been predominantly using single coil. The secret of that is you use a single coil guitar and a very, very loud amplifier, and you mic it in such a way that it captures the nuance of the speaker barely holding on for its dear life.
Got it.
And I was lucky enough to spend a lot of time with a guy called Eddie Kramer, who taught me a lot about miking up a single, finding out which of the 4 speakers. Okay, I'll give you a secret. When you put on your amp and you crank it loud, you listen to all 4 speakers with just nothing going through it. So literally just the white noise.
Yeah.
Whichever one is the loudest is the most responsive of the 4 speakers. You mic that one.
Whoa.
The next thing is you back your mic away from the speaker. You don't go right to the grill cloth. You back it away, and it gives you a bit of the room because a lot of the sound is in the room.
Yeah.
So if you're using an SM57 or an SM7B or what, back them away and turn the amp up. You get a very different sound.
Oh, that's awesome.
You don't want a speaker cone. You want the sound of the whole rig. And then maybe try miking the back of the cabinet too, where all the wood is, because that has an interesting tone.
Yeah. And I think another thing that you and Lee talk about in the videos is like when you're sitting on one side or the other and you'll hear how different it just sounds.
Oh, yeah.
Sitting in a room. And that's what's so sneaky. Like in acoustic guitars, most acoustic guitar players buy guitars because of how they sound when you're playing them.
Yeah.
But then you go to record them and they sound very different.
Yes.
And so that's where I think it's like really helpful to like bring a friend, have them play it. You hear how
play
it
it like
sounds.
a dobro. Light on your lap.
There you go.
Play it like a dobro.
Yeah. Just that like driver perspective, the driver experience versus the passenger is very different. Yeah. That's cool. So what's the oldest guitar you have right now? Because you seem like are you more a new guy or a used guy?
I love vintage guitars, but I just sold the one that I had for ages to fund something that was important to me. So I sold a 1963 Gibson Les Paul.
Oh, cool.
So the Gibson Les Paul before
But
Les Paul,
63
before
is.
well, it's what you would now call a junior, but then Les Paul said, "Take my name off that. I don't want you to." It looks like a SG. He didn't like the look of it, so they called it the SG. So it's actually an SG, but it's called a Les Paul because I sold that. I don't own a vintage guitar, so the oldest guitar I currently have is probably that yellow Yamaha that somebody found me.
Okay.
It was exactly identical to the one that I previously had. Other than that, I've got the very first ever Chapman guitars from 11 years ago, 12 years ago.
Cool.
I've got some pretty old stuff. Nothing that you'd go, oh wow, that's really amazing.
Yeah.
But I've obviously got the first ever Chapman, the very first prototype ML1. I've got the first production ML1 at the studio here. I've got the first ever made Ghost fret. I've got all the first.
That's so. I mean, those were. It's interesting because they're just so important to guitar culture at large, and I can't even imagine how personally important those things are.
Pretty mad.
Yeah.
You don't think it will? I mean, at the time when I got my first ML1, I didn't know that I was going to have a guitar company. All I knew was that I'd been given a signature guitar. So I had no idea that it was going to turn into this.
So did you start Chapman Guitars? Who owns Chapman? How did it start? I know.
So it's as simple as this, and I've told this a few times, but so I'll shorten it for you. But I was offered a signature guitar by a distributor called Barnes and Mother, and I just couldn't believe it. So I said, "Yeah, that sounds great." And they said, "Just tell us what you want. We'll make 50 of them. Strat, Telly, whatever." So I went home and made a video on YouTube saying, I get to make a guitar, but I love everything. Like I'm sort of shape agnostic, just whatever. I love them. So give me ideas. And I collaborated with my followers on the first design, and it became the ML1. And then we made 500 of them. And then the owner of that company said, "Listen, man, this is way bigger than a signature guitar.
Wow.
You should really consider starting a company." And I was like, "What? What are you talking about? Starting a company?" He went, "Yeah, you should launch a guitar company." He said, I won't stand in your way. Take the design, go ahead. So I launched it with Lee Anderton.
That's amazing.
So Lee and I are 50-50.
Okay.
Not Andertons, I have to say.
You got it, but him personally.
And I are 50-50, yeah.
Yeah. Man, it's been an amazing kind of show of friendship, it seems. Like I remember so long ago, all the pixel peeping, like getting so close to be like, what is that? As a guitar nerd, many shows and concerts have been like staring at, oh, well, that's an SG custom and but with the Chapman stuff, I was like, I don't know what that is. Like, it's such a confusing, trying to figure out for a long time before I realized like, oh, it's like their thing. Like they were making these guitars. I mean, we're talking 10 years ago, 11 years ago.
Yeah.
Back when you had long dreads.
Yeah, and when we launched that together, we did it on a handshake. There was no contract, no business. Chapman only became a limited company like 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
So it was just a handshake,
Man, that is so cool. I've always had in the back of my head wanting to start a guitar company. And because I've done a handful of things. I helped a friend start Rude Guitars in New Orleans, and that's what this white offset back here is. It's just my same kind of thing. Like he was like, "Hey, why don't you just pick out whatever you want?" I was like, "I want a semi-hollow. It feels like a Fender, but it's got a Gibson scale length."
That's cool.
So we just made it. It's just a cool, weird thing, and which both of us moved on in life and weren't able to keep a guitar business going because it's. Better than anyone. It is very difficult.
It is quite challenging, but I would say if you have the right team, it's tremendously rewarding. I mean, I love owning a guitar company. It is something that I don't take for granted.
That's awesome. So this is my friend Tom. Tom says, my son has 2 Chapmans in the house, an ML2 and an ML3.
Thank you very much. That's amazing. What a wonderful dad. I'm guessing you bought them both for his son.
Yeah. Man, Tom, will you be my dad?
Yeah.
Everybody needs a Floyd Rose equipped. Wait, what are we talking about?
Poo Ninja. I know this guy.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. You know, I have to say, of all the tremolo systems that currently exist, for me, it is either the Wilkinson VW PCR 400i, I think it's called, or a Floyd Rose. And I don't really like other trem systems unless they have a locking nut. I think it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
So I agree. Floyd Rose is great, but you know what you need is the steel ones. And there's a custom shop that makes really high grade aluminium, different color. I think it's called Futone. They're really cool. They make some beautiful trem stuff.
Yeah, I have a PV Falcon from the 80s that has a proper Kaler, and I like it, but the metal in the inserts is really soft, and so they regularly get stuck. Or you
got to be steel.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you mentioned having the trim without having a locking nut. I totally agree. One of my soapboxes is I think locking tuners are usually a waste of money, because I think if your guitar doesn't stay in tune, tuners are not your first thing you should change.
Well, that's an interesting point of view. I think if you string it properly by pulling it really tight, and then just locking it off, and then it's just over the nut, then if it's not staying in tune, the problem is generally the nut. But of course, it depends on the orientation of your headstock and where the tuners sit, whether the pull is straight or not, and then the bridge. I mean, having a tremolo with an angled headstock, so no string trees, a really good nut and locking tuners, it works. It's just not quite as effective as having a locking nut.
Yeah, and I think so. And I love this phrase you used earlier. Guitars are a physics system.
Yeah.
And so I think it's break angle, friction. Is there a wedge in the nut or in the saddle? I mean,
yes.
There are 30 things you need to do to a guitar before you really even need to change hardware. Like, just make sure that things that need to move, and things that don't move, stay stuck.
You know what I recommend to anybody that buys a guitar before they do anything is play it, because there is playing in is a real thing. If you play in a guitar, everything starts to become one a little bit, and then eventually you might realize that although the tuners it came with were affordable and a bit, they're really good. You just don't know until you play it in.
So if you are, what's your ratio? I think I actually wrote this question in here somewhere. Oh, no, this is the question I want to ask you. As someone who owns amazing guitars, owns your own guitar brand, and has played thousands of top-tier guitars, what guitars still stir your affections?
So which single guitar gives me the vibe the most?
Are there certain guitars you're just over? Like,
No.
I don't know. Like, what?
No.
Where are the guitars that you're like, oh my gosh, I have to play that. I want to.
There are guitars. Okay, I'm going to take your question and slightly mold it to make it a little bit more interesting for you. There are guitars that I just want to own, that I haven't owned.
Yep.
So I have always wanted to own a Parker Fly.
Yes.
I have always wanted to own one of the original modern Eagle PRS guitars in faded denim blue.
Oh, cool.
I have always wanted to own a vintage, maybe early 60s Blackguard Butterscotch Telly. I've always wanted to own a candy apple red 1975 Fender Strat, because I'm born 75.
Got it. 75. Okay.
Yeah. All of these guitars, I don't own them. Never have, but I want to.
Man, that's cool.
I've never found the one where I've gone, that's it, I'm buying it right now. And at some point, what I really want to do, and I would pitch this until I'm blue in the face to Netflix, is a Netflix series where I go on a tour around America buying the guitars I always wanted to own.
Yeah.
And I would call it Guitarnivore.
There you go. That's cool.
Could you imagine that?
Dude, that would be...
It would be like diners, drive-ins, and dives, but Rob Chapman buying his dream guitars around America.
Yeah, man. I haven't told anyone this. A couple months ago, a production company asked me if I'd want to make a pitch reel for or to make a sizzle reel for a show that they were working on in the vein of guitar. What's that show? American Pickers. And so they say like, hey, we want you to just go around, find people, capture the stories of guitars, talk about the history of both the guitars and also the families, and especially if they've been handed down. Because one of the coolest things I've ever been a part of in guitar culture was about a year and a half ago, I bought a 1967 Martin D28 from a grandfather and grandson.
Wow.
And I was trying to I was like, you have to keep this guitar. Like, the son is the grandson is this phenomenal bluegrass player. And I was like, this is the guitar. Like, if you're playing bluegrass, a Brazilian D28, there is no cooler. And so I finally got him. Anyway, they sold it to me, and what's really interesting is the grandson has grown up hearing his grandpa tell this story of like, I worked so hard, I loved my wife, I put $20 away every paycheck so that I could buy this 67 D28 for $400 in 1967.
Yeah.
And that kid wants to be like his grandpa, and so he wants to work hard and buy his own guitar. And so for him, he's like, I don't want my grandpa's guitar. And his pastor was selling.
Take your granddad's guitar. What's wrong with you? It's a Martin.
I know. So he also had a couple brothers. There's three of them. Three grandkids. They all play guitar. And so I came in saying like, don't sell this guitar, but if you sell it to me. And so with that money, Josh ended up, between that and then mowing grass, he was able to buy a D35 from his pastor. And so he got his cool guitar. That's when some really cool stuff happened. My friend Mike reached out to me. He's just this lion heart, incredibly generous guy. And he's like, hey, I got an idea. How about let's get this guitar fixed up. Let's give it back to him for free. And so he bought it from me. So I bought it for $3,750. And then I sold it to Mike for $6,000 because Mike knows that's how I take care of my kids and pay my mortgage. And,
Sure. Yeah.
And so he bought it for me, and then he put another chunk of money into it and got the neck reset, and it just cleaned up and everything great on it. And then we went back last fall. So it's probably 4 or 5 months between buying it and then giving it back to them. And we just went to hang out, and I'll send you the video. It's really amazing. Like,
that's amazing.
If I could keep doing that, like find really cool guitars, play them, and then I get so much more joy out of giving people the right guitar. So if I could just find somebody with deep pockets that just says, hey, go buy guitars and give them back for free. Like, yeah, that
would be amazing.
Yeah, dude, that's the coolest thing that I've been a part of. And what I keep finding is, it's not this guitar strap, but because I buy so many used guitars, and I love meeting like 85-year-old guys who've played this guitar for 40 years or 50 years, hearing their stories and then asking how do they want to be remembered. That's the hard drugs for me in guitar life.
It is fun giving away guitars, especially if you sort of do it under the radar for no strings. I really enjoy that. I mean, I have this thing at Chapman. We give away a couple of guitars a month,
so cool.
And we have done it to people who were down, had massive problems, didn't need a guitar, but it would make their day. And we've done it for people who were just really good players, even if they were just endorsed by another brand or didn't have any followers or whatever, just because it was the right thing to do. And it feels nice. Seriously. And I really enjoy that. So I commend you for doing it.
Dude, I mean, it's also Mike who is a big part of it. I mean, because he's the one that paid me and gave away the guitar. But
that takes a lot, huh?
Yeah, but there's something amazingly human. Like, it makes people like truly human to be really generous. And and Mike didn't do it for any recognition, and he's like been like, don't tag me and stuff, don't like. He just wants to him it just feels like the right thing to do.
Yeah, and,
yeah,
this is a bit of a can of worms, but the same with me. I have problems if I talk about giving stuff away, because then oh, it was the wrong charity, or this person didn't deserve it, or why did you give it to them? They vote for so and so, and it's like, oh God, come on. So now
Yeah.
we don't, we do it, we don't talk about it. It's the best way.
Yeah. I don't know if you know this, but some people have been talking about you. And I'm sorry. It's man, yeah, and I don't, I don't want to talk about that stuff.
It's fine.
It's been frustrating to watch from a distance because I now know more of what it's like to like. I don't like. I feel like I'm pretty uncontroversial, but people still seem to. Anyway, I like
Controversy and drama are, they're amazing bed partners, and I think YouTube loves drama. And you know, I think some people really enjoy looking for opportunity to cause drama,
yeah,
to create opportunity for themselves, and it becomes a bandwagon. And in my case, that's what happened, you know.
and
But
I think there is a problem. So some of the YouTube methodology has shifted from instead of creating, it's just documenting. And sometimes I think that's really good. Sometimes I think it's give me a deep, abiding sense of your life. Some of these, I think you've talked about them, and we're talking about food channels again. But what's Dianshi, the Chinese cooking videos, where she does like goes and forages and then cuts.
oh yeah, she's amazing.
That's like that's the perfect example of like just document. I just want to feel like I'm in the room, and it's just I'll just watch that giant knife, cut those shallots.
Yeah.
But then there's other times where it's people are misusing that, and they're not creating anything. They're just commenting on other people, and they're just trying to build controversy.
But it doesn't matter, because those people will always exist, and in many ways, what I went through, it was one of the best things that could ever have happened to me, for lots of reasons, and I think if anything, what it did is it I don't know. It's difficult to talk about, and
Yeah.
in a way, a lot of this would be over a pint in a. If do you have pubs where you live? I don't know if you have pubs.
We do. Well, we have bars, breweries. Yeah.
But while people are hating and casting aspersions and judging, I'm just releasing music, continuing with my friends, making guitars, and just having a great time. And if you think about those two things coexisting, it's quite funny, because you got one side saying he's this horrible guy, he's uncharitable, and he bullies people, and then the other side, I'm obviously not any of those things.
Yeah.
And I'm just carrying on, making music, having a band, having a guitar company, all my friends are there.
Yeah.
Do the same stuff.
And that's where I think it is helpful to draw the line between, like, your friends know who you are.
Yeah.
But you have lots of subscribers, but you're not friends with them, and that's okay. What gets me is when people pick apart things I say. I'm like, you only know the things I told you about that situation.
That's the thing. But in many respects, you can't blame people. I mean, you can't blame somebody for being interested in you when you make thousands of videos. I mean, I've made 2,300 videos. Of course,
Holy
people
cow.
are interested.
Yeah.
And for example, like the riff set your guitar thing. Of course, people care. I cared. All these things are interesting, and you want to know all the details. But then sometimes, when you run a business and there are other businesses involved, you can't give all the details. That's the problem. The problem is that when your hands are tied through business and wanting to protect people and all the things that a gentleman should do, then suddenly, because there is something hidden that can't be discussed, then obviously the only answer is that you're a liar, or there's shenanigans or something like that.
And that's the reality is, like, people are messy and life is nuanced.
Yeah.
And I just think it's tricky. There's there's a great scripture in the Bible that says, "Do not grow weary of doing good," and I think that's the message that it seems like you've like rolled into. Like,
well, and also do unto others as you would have done to yourself, because I'll be honest, it took me through a really dark time
I'm
all of
sorry.
that. No, it's fine. Don't worry. Honestly,
Yeah.
like I said, it's one of the best things that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
It was the pure irony of being called a bully by musicians who then formed a cover band of me playing my songs in a bullying act. It was just like, so in a way, it was like if it had been a movie, it would have been hilarious.
Yeah.
But I think what I really enjoyed of my own growth through the process of being cancelled is having the experience of starting again. It is so magical to go back to that place where every video is like, okay, I've got to make it really good. And
Yeah.
you reassess what it is you want. And this is the thing. This is the most important thing. Pre-cancellation Chappers was on a mission to make as much money as possible on the planet. I was going to earn every penny going because I was on that mindset of nothing will stop me. I'm just going to be the biggest YouTuber. I make the most money, and I want to have 15 bands, and I want to.
Yeah.
And how many hours was I going to spend with my kids? How many songs was I going to write? What was how much was enough? So when I got cancelled, all of a sudden I went from having a lot to having not a lot. And it made me immediately reassess the values of the things that I had previously. And it made me reassess what was important, moving to a new country, in a flat with my kids all day long, writing music, watching them grow up. And I realized what was important. And I changed my sights. And now I spend less time worrying about money and making thousands of videos and working. I mean, I was making videos for Toman, Anderton's, Water Bear, Guitar Center, everybody.
Yeah.
And I was like, when am I going to stop? You know, what I hadn't ever said, this is how much to earn. And then beyond it, you don't need it, so don't do the work.
Yeah.
But now I have made an important decision in my life, which is the threshold. I earn up to this point and then I stop. And I don't work any harder because I have kids, I have a family, and I have music to write. And if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have had that assessment, and I probably would have had a heart attack in my 50s.
Man, so that's where before I was doing guitar YouTube videos, I was in a sales job, and I was really good at it. And so I sold all the high-tech gadgets that measure the dangers workers are exposed to in heavy industry. So I was selling noise detection systems, dust monitoring systems, and but the better I got at that gig, the more like it was, hey, we need you to fly to Seattle for a couple days, and I had 2 little babies at the time. And it just got to where all of a sudden I kind of looked up and I was like, all of the guys that I'm working with, they've been married and divorced a couple times. Their kids don't talk to them. They've had heart attacks. You know, their bodies are worn out, and they live for trade shows. Yeah, and I was like, and I hate trade shows.
Really?
Well, no. Well, let me tell you, you've never been to a wastewater treatment trade show.
Oh, okay. Oh, no.
or
I thought you meant like Music Messer or NAMM. Or
no,
whatever.
Those are way fun. But but you know, like you can only go to so many, indoor air quality conferences.
Oh gosh.
And be like, well, this is the CO2 in the air. But I loved being really good at a thing, but I realized if I'm gonna keep doing that, it's gonna be really hard on my wife. It's gonna be really hard on my kids, and I'm sacrificing the future of all of those things to be good at one thing. And I think that's like a strange mercy that's come out of the COVID and pandemic time is I grew an amazing garden with my kids every day.
Great.
I'm like with my kids playing and climbing rocks and climbing mountains and I feel like I'm trying to like keep the right ratio of working hard and making videos. So I try to do two videos a week and a live show on Fridays. And then I've just started doing this, which now I'm like, oh man, 4 videos a week is killing me. I have to back off. And but I also just want to make sure that I'm like back to where each video is meaningful and helps people discover a meaningful life. Because I think,
Right.
and this is one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, what's the right ratio? So for people that are watching YouTube videos, what's the right ratio of watching gear videos and demos versus watching musicians play? Or, and there's the third option, which is people actually playing guitar. But what's the right ratio of like?
You know what? I mean, honestly, when I watch YouTube, I don't watch any guitar stuff because it's a busman's holiday. Do you know that phrase, a busman's holiday?
No.
It's an English phrase that means like, how do I explain this? Doing something you do for work in your spare time.
Yeah.
Like a chef coming home and cooking for his wife or whatever. I think gear is really fun, and we love gear. But what I love the most about the industry are the people. And that's why everything I have done has always been to build a community like you. That's why Lee and I had success at what we did, because we were friends and we do stupid things. It was about our friendship more than the gear. The gear was also there.
Yeah.
You know, we did videos where we would talk for 15 minutes without even mentioning the product. I think if you're interested in gear, it's important to learn about the people that play it.
Yeah.
And learn the history too. But I think it's also important to just look at other things, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, I'm back at Anderton's in a couple of weeks' time.
Oh, that's awesome. I love those videos, and I love, especially now, like, you guys have still done it well with the obvious complications. Yeah, man. I think some of my favorite guitar memories of the last 10 years are like watching, because like the Andersons videos, especially like the blindfolds and the shootouts, the longer format stuff. It was like these treats. And I remember like I would go to the gym. I'm like, all right, I'm going to walk on the treadmill as long as this video is. So, but it's, yeah. And so I have recently felt more pressure just being, I didn't start YouTube to do demos, but people care what I think about guitars. And so I've started doing
I think they can
demos.
tell that you're honest. I think that's what it is. You come across as a very honest person.
Thanks, man.
And either that or they mistake you for fluff. One of those two.
You know, I've never actually gotten that. I get that all the time. I get, this isn't even, well, yes, I get that I look like Fluff all the time. And it's like, if Fluff liked acoustic guitars, because I'm like 60-40 acoustic to electric.
Uh-huh.
But my best heckle I've gotten is if you want to see an even fatter James Corden who's also bad at guitar, this channel's great for you.
You just gotta send a person like that love.
Yeah.
You know what? You know what's funny is how many times have you ever commented on somebody's video?
Oh, very rarely.
Exactly. Like.
Yeah.
I have a text thread with Lee, Pete, Rabia, and we just chat shit all the time. But we were talking recently saying, do you ever leave a comment on a YouTube video? And we thought, I mean, man, hardly ever. I mean, I did recently on a video by an artist called Yeba, who's phenomenal. But we don't. None of my friends ever do, or if we do, it would be like, wow, this was really cool. If we don't like something, we normally just watch something else.
Yeah.
So you have to think, for the poor people that leave hatred,
yeah,
or make content about how something is bad, what they have to have been through to feel the need to do that, rather than just tune into something happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, weird, isn't it? Strange.
Yeah, and I think it's all like, man, there's so much to be said about that. Because I mean, like, there's this practical thing in which to make a video takes a long time. Like,
yeah.
I mean, for each minute you watch is probably 6 or 7 minutes of other stuff, filming, editing, thinking about it. Man, that gets me.
Well, you know, over the past 15 years, I have filmed 2,300 videos. And if you plot those 2,300 videos over 15 years, it's 3 a day every single day. And if you work out how long it takes to film and edit, three videos every single week, it's almost, I can't even believe that I managed to do it.
Yeah.
It's absolutely mind blowing. That I was almost, I think I was genuinely addicted to shooting and editing videos. I think that was a problem
I
in
know,
some
I
ways.
know. Because it also feels particularly vain, and I'm sure you have the same thing. I spend most of my week watching myself talk.
Oh
And
man, if I can't, my wife would attest to this. I cannot hear myself say greetings without feeling nauseous. I've
yeah.
heard it so many times now. It's just I'm over it.
I saw something the other day. I saw some montage of you saying greetings.
Oh
Like,
god,
I'm sure that, yeah. It's
that's
like,
if I go to hell, that's what that is.
greetings. It's like it's like Rogan and you, as far as like, there could be deep fakes because you've said every word
Oh yeah.
that could be said.
You know, I'm thinking about changing my salutation word to salutations from next year onwards because I've done 15 years of greetings.
Yeah.
Trying to think it might be good to change it, but I guarantee I'll slip up at some point and greet people.
I'm sure. Man, because what's the other? There was one I used to always say, like, you would say something about, like, the power of our rock has cleft in twain, or just all of that filigree of language.
It comes from as a kid being really interested in like Milton's Paradise Lost and Lord of the Rings, and you know, I love Shakespeare and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think that there is a more like fantastic or just more filigree in language and a depth of language in English culture than in the States. Which I was in a Shakespearean acting troupe. That's kind of how I learned how to play a lot of guitar. Which I learned to play a bunch of Celtic stuff doing that.
Oh,
And I still play in Dadgad most of the time on an acoustic guitar.
What is the tuning for the people? Dadgad is the truth.
Dude, it is so... And it's like, I think what I love about it is that it forces me to be myself.
Yeah.
To just find stuff. Yeah, that's one of the questions I get asked every single day, which is, hey, what tuning are you playing in that video? And it's like, if you don't recognize chord shapes, it is Dadgad. But yeah, I love it. I mean, to me, it's a cool way that like my history still is kind of living with how I play. I also think you could definitely get away with changing up your salutation.
I don't know. I think I've made my bed now. You know, it's the way I have to greet the world forever. But
oh man,
I would like a change. I think a change is due.
Think about it. Well, you got a couple days till you go to Anderton's. You can just try them out, see how it goes. Because that's one of the things that you've done along the way and has always made your brand stand out is there's always such deep involvement with vote on this guitar. Because isn't that how like the Ghost Fret came about? Wasn't that like a Q&A?
Well, all of them have been collaboratively designed unless they were the signature model of an artist. So ironically, the original Ghost Fret was just me. And the original ML3 RC was just me. But everything else is collaboratively designed. Yeah, so it's the weirdest experience because we never know what we're going to make.
Yeah.
Weird.
Well, yeah. So it's kind of interesting. What do you make of? And this isn't a question that I have, but what's his name? Hartley Peavy. One of his like deep convictions is that Peavy would never reissue a guitar or an amp because he said our best guitars are always in front of us.
Yeah.
Would you reissue? Like if we were like, hey, it's the 10-year anniversary, I want an ML1.
I mean, I know Hartley, and he definitely would reissue stuff.
Oh, really?
I mean, in fact, I'm sure they reissued stuff previously. The Bandit, for example. I don't know. I wonder if that's a misquote. I don't know. I'd be interested to find out.
Because I've heard it a bunch, and I've said it a bunch, so maybe I'm
you might be right.
Misinforming the world.
I've had dinner with him a couple of times. He's a really nice guy, actually.
Oh, that's awesome.
And obviously, PV, I don't know whether it still happens in America, but PV doesn't really happen in England anymore.
I think they're trying real hard. So I made a video of a PV Classic 20 back here, a mini head. And I made a video called The Problem with PV. And I talked about, so when I was in the health and safety job, PV was one of my customers. And I was seeing, the amount of respirators they're buying, the amount of air purifiers,
Yeah.
all the stuff from industry. I'm like, they're down to where there can't be more than 8 or 10 people using this stuff per month. And then I met with them and they said, yeah, we just do the custom shop. And that's when, I mean, talk about bad press, their whole thing with Undercover Boss.
Yeah, I know.
But I've just in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Okay, well, so I made this video and talking about how like my favorite PV amp is the Classic 20, the little combo from the 90s.
Yeah.
And I just love those. And I wish that was still kind of the thing they were making.
It's difficult when something like that happens because, of course, in a company like PV, there are so many people involved.
Yeah.
It just takes one bad person problem to throw it all over. But you know what PV made that was great was a couple of guitars were really good. I mean, I only got involved in them because I was really good friends with their demonstrator.
I feel like some of their stuff I could totally see your style and their style lining up.
Well, I mean, I don't know.
I just mean like maybe the Wolfgangs, because they're like
I see.
PV. They're like PRS adjacent, not in quality, but in some of their vibe, like the quilted maple and the purple and the reds and the bright colors. But yeah, so I made this video. It's actually one of the first videos I ever had somebody like call me that was angry that I made a video. And it was the president of the PV factory. And he said, hey, you got a couple things wrong. And we ended up talking for about an hour and a half. And he was like, hey, like, if you like the PV Classic 20, the Classic 30, and we just became friends. What I love, this is like right in the middle of pandemic. I kept hearing this like beeping sound. And I was like, hey, like, what's that sound in the back? He's like, oh, I'm running the forklift. He's like, because of COVID restrictions, everybody's home. He's like, I'm the president now, but I started out in the warehouse. So, like, I'm fulfilling orders.
Yeah.
And that got me. Just, like, that's the kind of, like, that's the leader you want in a business. Like, the guy who's like...
It's the only way to survive times like this. I mean, myself, I've been doing artist relations, all the social media, and then the collaborative design, YouTube content.
Man.
That's all me. A lot of people they'll message me on Instagram and then they'll message Chapman Guitars and I'll go, hey man, on Chapman Guitars, and they'll go, oh, you know, I was just talking to Rob again. This is Rob again because I run all the social media on Chapman Guitars.
Yeah, man, yeah, that's. I just recently have hired an editor because I'm just like I have to like.
That's great.
Like I have to get out, and so I mean he does 20 hours a week for me, but it's like. That's 20 hours I'm not staring at a computer and watching. That's really
myself. Good. Really, really good.
Because I'm trying to get out and, help people discover more meaningful life around guitars.
Yeah.
And so for me, recently that's been like writing some courses on the practical side, but also like the practical side of how to negotiate, how to buy a guitar, how to find the right thing for you, and then also how to build community, and then getting into just the deeper questions of life. As they're connected to guitars. So one of my questions is, how can people have a meaningful life around guitars? It seems like you have a meaningful life, a family and kids and life, and how do you do that, and what advice would you give?
Write music. Music is a medicine. It is a cathartic experience. You have to let music work through you. When I write, I don't sit down to write. It's just a thing that happens. And when you find a song that you love and it hits you somewhere deep, just let it work. It's like a medicine. So music for me is so much more than just playing the guitar. I mean, as a vocalist, it is like a trance-like state that I go into in certain circumstances, and then it just comes through, and I just like record on my voice notes on my phone. Or whatever it is that's coming out. Music is the whole point. Otherwise, you just have a guitar. What's the point in having a guitar? It's like owning a glass but never drinking anything. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I say to everybody, even if you're just about to start learning, write music, even if it's just one note at a time. It doesn't matter what it is.
Oh, that's good, man. Because I think one of the things is how do you push past. I'm someone who's always struggled with like, I write something I'm like, oh, I don't like that. It's. How do you get past crumpling up the paper and throwing it away and starting over? How do you push through?
Never negotiate with yourself.
Oh, that's good.
Never be your own. Never be your own producer. Never negotiate with yourself. It's like if you have the experience of writing a song and it just kind of comes through you into the recorder or the paper, don't mess with it. That's the way it was supposed to be. That's how nature intended it to be, or whatever you believe in. It came through your body into this planet.
Yeah.
So let it be. And more often than not, if I try and mess with something that came that way, it's just it's the detriment of the music. But always listen to the opinions of others. So,
That's
for
good.
example, with Clockwork, Wolf and Company, I have an album written, and one song at a time, I bring it to the band, and we kind of put it apart, look at it, and then put it back together again. And it's a very difficult experience to go, here's a song I wrote that came out of my head in one go. Oh, feel free to open it up and have a little look. And then sometimes one of them will come up with a piece that just fits perfectly, and that's why that was supposed to happen.
Man.
And other times they'll suggest something, and I'll just go, no, that doesn't feel like the same spirit, you know. But it's important to be open, just write music and just let it happen.
That's so good, because I think that, man, I'm going to take that to heart, that don't be your own producer. Because I think I believe that humans are meant to create. I think that we are meant to bring out all of the potential that this world has been charged with. And I think that if you are saying, oh, that's not good, if you're stopping other people from experiencing what you're making, like, you're doing a dehumanizing thing to yourself. Like, you're meant to create and you're not letting yourself create, that, you'll get verklempt.
The other thing is, Jeremy, you're going to write songs that you don't like and that other people do.
Yeah.
So, for example, I wrote a song called Idle Hands that was about, I had a couple of my friends have committed suicide, and 3 in my life, which has been very, very difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
So a lot of my music is about dealing with that process.
Yep.
And coming to terms with the passing, coming to terms. It's okay not to be okay about these things sometimes. Yeah. And so when you write a song like that, very often you don't like it. You don't want to listen to it, but then other people might really like it. So it's a balance. You have to accept that you're going to write something that might mean something very deep to somebody else, but not necessarily to you.
So when I was 20, my mom died very abruptly, and and it was right before Christmas. And she had a heart condition. That's what killed her, and I have the same heart condition.
Right.
And within a couple months, doctor said that I needed to get a defibrillator implanted.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of trauma around that, and just sadness and sorrow. And what's interesting is I wrote a couple songs about that, and they're fairly veiled or poetic. And what's interesting is I stopped playing them, because what I found was I got tired of having to go back to the place. Because it's kind of the same thing, like when someone you care passes away, and then later you interact with someone that knew them but didn't know that they passed away, like, or if you're the bearer of that news, you live it again, and that's it's heavy, and
it's difficult.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting. There are some times that it's just the message and what will happen in people is more important for you to play that song. But it's interesting.
It is a burden that you carry it to somebody else because it will help them. That's it. And when I have toured songs that were almost unbearable to sing, that I would well up on stage singing, it was important to do it for the people in the audience, because one person, you never know, you might change them. That's happened before.
Yeah, but I'm sure there are also songs that are like not emotionally heavy. Like, can you imagine like being Lynyrd Skynyrd and people being like, play Freebird? And you're like, we're gonna play fucking Freebird. There is not like, oh man, imagine like a song that you loved 40 years ago and you have played 10.
I think you rediscover, like, I must have played Catalyst about 1,000 times on tour with Dorje, and probably, but each time we play it, you discover a little bit in it that I like more, or I play it a little bit differently. It evolves.
Oh, that's awesome.
Songs evolve live, Even with Clockwork, Wolf and Company, I find that some of the tracks we play, they continue to grow in a certain way.
Man, that's so good. Yeah, because I think that those things, they have life and they'll evolve and grow, and your connection to them will change and grow. Cool. So, man, it seems like you've had a serious like shuffle of the cards in your life and your vocation, where you're working, where you're living, all of that. And this is hard to look into the crystal ball, but like where do you 40 years from now? And I understand this is an impossible question. What's your legacy? Because you talked a little bit about being canceled, and I wanted to be very sensitive to that topic. And, but yeah, where do you hope?
My legacy will be Chapman Guitars. It will be the videos that I have left on YouTube for other people to enjoy, learn from, or just relax with a beer, whatever they need to do. I like to leave content like footsteps behind me. So if you need something stupid, I got you. If you need something serious, I've got you. I've got everything on YouTube. And I think, I haven't reached my final form yet. I'm continuing to grow and learn and enjoy what it is that I'm doing. I've got another couple of albums in me. I probably have a book at some point. And I think I'd really like to leave music that means something to people, and maybe a book that can help people who want to do a bit of what I have done, because when I started, there was really no one that could tell me how to do it, because it was really early days. And I wish there had been someone around to say, you're teaching a robot called the algorithm where and when you are, so upload at the same time. Things like that, just rudimentary basics of how to navigate the social planet. And having gone from nothing to million views a month, to being cancelled, to growing up again, I think I've lived through the whole cycle of everything to maybe have enough experience that I can pass it to people who want to do this.
Man, that's so good. Cool. Well, Rob, man, this has been awesome. So we'll close here. We'll end. You and I will hang out for just a second.
Yeah.
And but let's see. I think that's the last of the questions, comments. Other people are headed out. Got to scoot. Have a great weekend. Throw some thumbs up, folks.
Thanks, guys.
This is so good. All right. Thanks, everybody. This is Guitar Huntery in another country, in Malta in the UK. All right. I'll end the broadcast.
Thanks, Jeremy.
And then we'll hang.
Okay.